Let's take ourselves back to 1920. Its first light on a cold, misty morning in London's Dockland. A ship slips into its berth and 20-year-old Lam Fook steps onto British soil, a new life ahead of him. And it was here in Limehouse that he met and fell in love with an English girl. They had a child, Connie, and she was born into a time and place where being mixed was to be thought of as mysterious, exotic, but also morally corrupt. But if that prejudice defined the lives of those early families, the whole history of mixed-race Britain has seen a sea change in attitudes. Britain today has one of the most ethnically diverse populations in Europe. And this is the story of a nation transformed. Connie, a gracious 87 years old now, presides over a family that is as British as they come. How are you? Good to see you again. Yes. So we've got 4 generations here.
Yes, yes.
That's incredible.
1, 2, 3, 4.
You're the mixed race family, really, aren't you?
Yeah.
What happened to you? We've come a long way. In the 1970s, mixed race people were themselves still struggling to define who they were. And the country too was confused about how to deal with a rising mixed race population.
His mother is an English girl and his father is African, and he really has got the nicest disposition, as so many of these little Negro boys have.
We got some very unpleasant letters that I should be horsewhipped down the street.
And it wasn't just white society that was struggling to cope.
Look, so what if she's pregnant? So what if the father's black?
Black?
If my sister had come home with a black guy, then I would have been against it.
Connie's lifetime has seen mixed-race people move into the mainstream. Her grandchildren and great-grandchildren are testament to that. But for earlier generations, the search for an identity they could call their own was often a painful process, especially as it took place against a backdrop in which what colour you were was a political issue. Whitechapel in London. In 1961, in the school holidays, a 14-year-old girl headed for the Wimpy Bar. Where else? She went up to the counter and waited to be served.
I ordered food. He came up from behind and he served me. And I caught his eye, just his mop of black hair. From that time, I thought, yes.
Well, even on the first time you met him there, did you think, oh, he's all right?
Yeah.
Did you?
First date was when we went out. We went to see an Indian movie called Sangam.
That was quite unusual. There you are, a white girl. I mean, presumably you had no idea what you were listening to or watching. Did you mind that?
No, I didn't mind at all.
Because you were sitting next to him. Shafiquddin had arrived in the UK from Bangladesh in 1960, aged just 18. Like immigrants everywhere, this young, single man was looking for work. Shafiq was part of one of the last big waves of immigration before Britain began to close its doors to people from its former colonies. Between 1962 and 1971, there'd been a succession of immigration acts,
By that time, the number of South Asians stood at almost 500,000.
In the 1960s, more and more Bangladeshi families were settling here around Brick Lane. Like generations of immigrants before them, they found the housing cheap and the jobs plentiful. They moved in alongside old East End families like Pamela's, people who were rooted in the area.
The arrival of these new settlers led to growing racial tension. Brick Lane would eventually become a favoured hunting ground for the far right.
They've opened the floodgates of our country to an invasion even more foreign than that might have threatened us in 1914 or 1940.
The far-right ugly politics embodied by the National Front was a growing feature of the 1970s. Support was particularly strong in East London, and Shafiq's Wimpy Bar was on the front line.
I was facing racist problem with the Wimpy, because I used to have the people coming in. A couple of times we had a window broken as well. I used to serve National Front young boy. Skinhead worked in a shop. I used to say, yes, you can sit down, have a meal, or do what you want, as long as you don't cause problem inside.
But there is always something there to remind me.
When Pamela and Shafiq began courting, racial prejudice was already bubbling beneath the surface. No wonder they met in secret.
Naturally, we had a lot of problems. You know, like racist remarks and things like that with my girlfriends and boyfriends at my estate where I lived and everything.
When you go out those days, even you get problem with the Asian as well. Ah, look at this woman. And especially with white. You could hear it when you're walking, oh, F, B, look at them. Especially down where she was living.
But eventually they had to come out of the shadows.
When you decided this is a man you loved, what was it like telling your parents about it?
My mum did accept it straight away. I said I speak to Dad myself, and he just didn't want to hear about it.
He was angry, was he?
He's very, very angry. Why I'm going out with an Asian person.
Despite that reaction, Pamela and Shafiq went ahead with their marriage in 1965. Her father refused to attend the wedding. They became one of the first mixed-race couples to get married in Brick Lane Mosque.
Did you, Shafiq, when you realised that Pamela's father was not going to bless your marriage, did you think, well, maybe this is the wrong thing to do?
No, I did not think wrong, because I thought the whole family accepted, and I think it was bad for him because he did not realize what sort of person I am. My mind was, I prove you what sort of guy I am, and you be the sorry, not me.
The impending arrival of a baby, a grandchild for Pamela's disapproving father, brought matters to a head. Difficult as it was, she decided to confront him.
I said, I'm going to start a family and I want everything to be fine between me and you. We've got to get all this put behind us. He just got up, walked out, slammed the sitting room door, went in his own bedroom. I give him ultimatum, like it's either not having me as your daughter anymore, or you're going to come around, you're going to speak to Shafi.
You went that far?
Yeah. Then after that, he come around slowly.
It must have been a huge relief for you.
It was. Really was. Just stop.
What do you get upset for?
Don't worry, Pamela.
No, you don't have to get emotional.
It's okay, it is emotional. It
happened in life.
You're an incredibly brave woman.
The baby was born in 1968, the first of 6 children. From those inauspicious beginnings, Pamela and Shafiq have raised a family and proved their critics wrong.
I am proud, very proud of what I've achieved today in the 45 years I've been married to Shafiq.
So Pamela and Shafiq had to overcome the disapproval of family, and as if that weren't bad enough, they were falling in love at a time of growing racial tension. Identity, how you saw yourself, how others looked at you, that was becoming a major issue. And if you were mixed race, finding and describing your own unique identity was more complex and more difficult. And nowhere was that played out more starkly than in the field of adoption.
It's October 1959 and Paddington Station is busy. Scanning the departures board for her train, a nervous-looking woman hurries towards the platform. In one hand she carries a suitcase, and holding her other hand tightly is a pretty 2-year-old. A mixed-race child.
The girl's name was Rosemary Walter, and the journey she was about to embark on would change her life forever. She couldn't have known it, of course, but she was being rejected, hidden. You see, Rosie's mother, a white woman married to a white man, had had a black lover. And Rosie was living proof of a relationship that was not just illicit, but in those days deemed utterly shameful.
The year before, in 1958, a survey had showed that 71% of British people disapproved of mixed relationships. In other words, they disapproved of women like Gladys, Rosie's mother.
She then had to leave the marital home. She never told her husband why, but she left the marital home. And she lived in a small flat in Clapham. And she got pneumonia. And I think that maybe she needed a break. I think she was quite a sad person and had quite a sad life as a result of what happened in regards to me being born.
Gladys, no longer in a relationship with her black lover, was living alone. She was depressed and finding it hard to cope with a baby.
She'd often sort of refer to the fact that her life changed drastically for the worst once I was born. But she also maintained that she loved me dearly, and it was very sad for her having to let me go.
And what about the wider family, your white family, if you like, your mother's family?
She'd asked her sister if she could stay, if we could both go and stay, and her sister had said that she could go, but I couldn't go because she didn't want the neighbours to see a black child. They didn't want it to be known that her sister had had a child with a black man.
Spurned by her family and friends, desperate for help, Gladys made a decision which would mark Rosie's life forever.
Rosie's mother went to the National Children's Home for help, but they told her there were no places available in London. Rosie would have to go to Swansea. So, on Saturday, the 5th of October, 1959, Rosie and her mother found themselves here on Platform 1.
The 2-year-old child was handed over by her mother to a social worker. The train pulled away, and Rosie Waters would spend the next 16 years living in care homes. She'd spend those years battling to fit in with black or white children, but found herself rejected by both.
Rosemary's mother was by no means on her own. There were many other women with their own secrets to hide, and like Rosie, they too ended up in care. Exactly how many? Well, that's difficult to know. Nobody was actually collating that kind of information. What is clear from social workers and other subsequent studies is that there were many more mixed-race children in care than you'd expect.
Hello, sunshine.
That was because it was difficult to find adoptive homes for these children in the 1960s.
There's so many of these little Negro boys waiting for families. At the moment, we just haven't any homes for them.
Come on!
There simply weren't many couples prepared to foster or adopt mixed-race children. And a care network run largely by the well-meaning was ill-equipped to change attitudes.
His mother is an English girl and his father is African. He's not a big baby, he's quite a compact little boy. He's sort of coffee-coloured, big brown eyes, nicely shaped mouth, and he really has got the nicest disposition, as so many of these little Negro boys have.
No wonder middle-class Britain, with its privet hedges and milk carts, remained resistant to the idea of mixed-race relationships, let alone adopting the children that followed. But in the early 1960s, there was a challenge to this jaundiced view, and it came from the most unlikely quarter, the heart of the British aristocracy.
What's that? Walk on, Matt.
Lady March gives her youngest daughter Louisa a running commentary on the elements of horsemanship.
The Goodwood estate in Sussex, home to the Duke and Duchess of Richmond. Susan Grenville Grey had married the future Duke in 1951. The couple had 3 birth children of their own, but they wanted more and decided to adopt.
Adoption is a big thing, and on top of that, you decide to go and adopt mixed-race children. It must have been quite a tough decision, wasn't it?
It was a tough decision to decide whether to adopt. But it wasn't so tough to decide what child we thought we would adopt, because we particularly wanted to have children that weren't going to get much of a chance otherwise.
By 1960, they had adopted 1 mixed-race baby, Maria. But the Duke and Duchess didn't stop there.
When Mum came and picked me up, I sat on her hip, held her thumb, and that was the end of that. There was no way that she was going to put me down or that I was not going to be going with her.
Naomi March is a promising rider, and whenever she's free from her comprehensive school at Chichester...
Born to a white English mother and a black South African father in 1962, Nimmy March was adopted when she was 6 months old. The Duchess's father had been firmly against the idea, but her arrival softened even the hardest of hearts.
He changed his mind as soon as he saw the kids.
Yes, and my mother's a very fair person, and she decided whether they were there, she would treat them as her grandchildren, mostly, anyway. So it was all right. And then he was very wonderful, wasn't he, with both my children. We were passionate about what we were doing, and I think we didn't probably realise what reactions there would be. We got some very unpleasant letters.
Did you?
Yes.
What kind of letters? What were they saying?
Oh, that I should be horsewhipped down the street, and that we should be, drummed out of everywhere.
But the Duke and Duchess had rather more pressing problems closer to home.
We had a few hair issues, didn't we? Do you remember?
Yeah, what was the hair issue? You're going to have to tell us now.
Because
detangle it.
using excuse me, conventional kind of Caucasian hairbrushes on my hair just wasn't going to work.
Oh, okay.
And so, it was a while before we discovered the Afro comb and ways of not making my eyes water quite so much as Mum tried to drag an ordinary comb through this curly mess.
And as the swinging 60s gave way to the 1970s, Britain gained a reputation for the avant-garde.
By the 60s, Britain was cool and it was fashionable. And whether homegrown or from abroad, this was the hip place to be if you were a musician, an actor, or an artist. And these people had one thing in common. They bucked the social conventions, including those narrow attitudes about what race your partner should be. Many of these starlet couples got married or at least had long-term relationships. And you've got to remember, these were iconic people, so how they lived their lives as mixed-race couples, well, that sent out a powerful signal. They were confident, they were carefree. Above all, they seemed happy.
How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people?
But the relaxed, carefree attitudes of film stars and rock legends, protected in their own gilded world, still had little resonance in ordinary homes.
I think there will be tensions in your children. They would neither be white nor black. I think that this is going to be a big hazard in your life.
Well, I hope to prove you wrong.
Well, I hope you
I
do.
hope, yes. I honestly hope so, yes.
But I wonder what Martin will think when he sees his first son, if it should be dark in colour.
Yes, but I mean, I hope
wonder.
Martin has got more intelligence to accept whatever colour this child is.
Mixed blessings, it had to be.
After the aristocracy and showbiz, it was television's turn to chip away at prejudice. A 1970s TV series featured a black and white couple who just secretly got married.
Congratulations, Mrs. Simpson. I'm very glad you're my wife.
Thomas and Susan are married.
Oh, my God. Whatever you do, Edward, don't embarrass her.
Thomas, what have you done? Dad, you've got yourself a daughter-in-law.
I suppose my wife Frances and I are the kind of couple the show was trying to portray. We met at university in the 1970s, and I'm happy to say both our immediate families were completely on side. In fact, more than that, they went out and batted for us.
Well, they could be white, or they could be black one side and white the other.
It wasn't quite so easy for the TV couple. There was the thorny issue of children.
They'll be black, and that puts them at a disadvantage in this society, as I'm sure Susan well knows.
Yes, I do. But we're sort of hoping it won't be such a problem one day.
It all looks so dated now, doesn't it? Let's face it, the characters are cliched, perfect examples of the stereotype. But I don't really think that's the point. The fact that a show like Mixed Blessings was on primetime TV at all, well, that was quite an achievement in itself. It showed that mixed-race relationships were becoming a reality in 1970s Britain.
Who is the man that would risk his neck for his brother man?
But just as mixed-race relationships were carving out a space in the public consciousness, there was a parallel rise in black militant politics. It was influenced by America's Black Power movement. From the 60s onwards, it produced icons like Angela Davis and the black American athletes who took their silent but potent protest against racial discrimination into the 1968 Mexico Olympics. Be black, be proud. That was the new mantra. And the black stars of the day symbolized that pride. But what if you were neither black nor white? People of mixed race found themselves in a sort of racial no man's land, caught in limbo between the new black consciousness and a white status quo. John Conte, champion boxer and 70s celeb, was born to a father from Sierra Leone and an Anglo-Irish mother.
Do you think of yourself as a black family rather than a white family or a mixed or a coloured family?
Well, speaking for myself, I just regard myself as myself and as a person of the world and as a human being. Not black, white, blue, pink, or anything, you know, just me.
There was a sort of invisibility of mixed race people in the 70s. On the one hand, they were there and they were recognised because the use of the term half-caste was very prevalent in the 70s. People who were from mixed white and black backgrounds tended more to be seen as black. There wasn't that sort of sophistication of understanding racial identities in the 70s that we have now. And so I think there was very much a sense of you're either white or you're not
or you're
white.
Black.
But if mixed-race children had to be classified as black or white, where did that leave their prospects for adoption? It was a whole new battleground. In the 60s, there'd been little debate about what became known as transracial adoption. Was it good or bad for mixed-race children to have white parents? There was no official guideline, each family muddling its way through the fog of prejudice and ignorance.
Are there any particular problems in fostering coloured children?
Not really, but once I was out shopping with Carol and there was two little boys playing. They said, I say, missus, is that your kid there? And I said, yes. I said, that's my daughter and I'm proud of her. And Carol just got hold of my hand, squeezed it, and she said, you're not really my mother, are you? But I said, I am your mother within the heart, because I do love you.
It was only in 1970 that the Home Office gave a formal view on the subject, saying that children of mixed race should be considered for adoption by both black couples and white couples.
But it very quickly sparked off a lively and sometimes angry debate about culture and heritage. Mixed-race children brought up by white families were accused of being like coconuts, brown on the outside, but white inside. Racial identity was about to take centre stage.
In 1975, Judith Logan was born to a mixed Caribbean father and a white mother. She was adopted as a baby.
Yes, I would describe myself as a happy child growing up because I had a loving family who, they probably, kept me safe and maybe sheltered me from a lot that I'm not aware of.
Her new parents were white and lived in Inverness, the Scottish Highlands.
It was a very small town, it wasn't big. I mean, we had like one set of traffic lights, and that's how small it was, so there wasn't a great diversity of colour, it was quite white.
Where you lived has always had an impact on the experience of people of mixed race, and for Judith, her isolation soon caused problems.
I mean, my secondary school, it was a living hell. I hated every single moment of it, from basically day one until I left. I was visibly on my own. There was the usual name calling. I got called nigger, I got called monkey, I got told I should go back to where I belonged, got told I smelt bad.
Judith says she got little help from her teachers and, try as they might, she feels her white parents simply couldn't understand what it was like to be black.
My mother would try and support me, but it wasn't the same as going to somebody who's black and going, look, you've probably been in the same situation as me, you're black, because white people, they don't tend to get called niggers, that I'm aware of, and so it was difficult.
Judith's case, along with some others, set alarm bells ringing for black social workers. You see, even more than the bullying, what worried them was that these children, brought up within white families, were losing out on their racial heritage. Across the Atlantic, in America, black social workers there were already involved in a campaign against transracial adoption. They called it cultural genocide.
The American experience was soon mirrored here in Britain. By the early 1980s, there was a hot debate about transracial adoption. In 1983, a report by the British Association for Adoption and Fostering argued that most transracial adoptions had been successful. White families provided stable homes and children were happy.
But one of the findings in the report proved hugely contentious. It said that mixed-race children adopted by white families, and I'm quoting here, saw themselves as white in all but skin colour and had little knowledge or experience of their counterparts growing up in the black community.
That comment caused outrage among some black social workers. They fired off a document to the House of Commons denouncing the evils of transracial adoption, describing it as internal colonialism and a new form of slave trade, but this time, they said, only black children are used.
The difference between our white and black family in terms of parenting is essentially one revolving around the black parent in a black family having the crucial function of teaching its children to cope with a fundamentally racist society.
You're talking about educating children for racism. Isn't that a self-fulfilling prophecy?
It's an absolute prerequisite of any conscious black family life. We are trying to teach our children to survive.
I wanted to fit in. You know, and I think it's hard to fit in when your entire family is one colour and you're not. All the time I used to always want to be brought up in a black family. I wanted to be, at least have one black parent. And it doesn't have to be all black, but I wanted to be brought up in a mixed race family, so there was a black parent.
Imagine the anguish not only in the classroom but even at home. For Judith, the racism she experienced during her childhood led to low self-esteem. She spent many years questioning who she really was.
It is important for me to have that mixed race identity. It's who I am. I wouldn't be me without it.
But the unique and acute challenges of being mixed race were not restricted only to those children who'd been adopted.
On our side of the street we had a black family, and then the rest of the street was predominantly white. There were no Asians. And when there was ever confrontations between the black family and the white kids, I was always like, which side should I take?
Clement Cooper grew up in Moss Side, Manchester. Clement's father was black Jamaican, his mother white. But he'd begun to consider himself black. In the early 80s, Clement started a career as a professional photographer. By 1988, he had enough work for an exhibition at the Corner House Gallery in Manchester. He called it Presence. It was a series of intimate and telling portraits of people from his neighbourhood, most of whom were black. But within a week of the exhibition opening, there was trouble.
I got a telephone call to say a group of black youths had marched into the gallery with screwdrivers, bypassed the security system, and had removed from the walls a set of the photographs of the black young men from the youth club.
Clement wanted his pictures back, and so he approached the youths at the club. Their reply shocked him.
A line of attack was one of my race, and he started to abuse me along racial lines and attacking me for me being mixed race. And he started to use expressions of you half caste and you half breed, and I eventually got assaulted. The pictures never got returned. I got death threats. My family had to, be very mindful where they went to, my father in particular. How can you defend against that kind of torrent of anger and aggression when it's directed at the very thing what your being's about, your identity?
The attack pushed Clement into a period of soul-searching. He set off to the land of his father, only to be told he wasn't really one of them either.
I went to Jamaica thinking, well, if I'm rejected here, I could be accepted in a Jamaican environment, only to be told by my aunt that at a time of giving a blood transfusion to a boy from the community who was dying, that Clement, in front of the whole crowd of people from the community, can't give blood because he's got white blood in him. And white blood cannot be transfused or taken and put into a black person, especially a black child.
So Clement Cooper returned to Britain. He'd gone halfway around the world and still didn't know where he fitted in. As it happened, the answer was just a few miles down the M62 from Manchester to Liverpool, a port city that had always been home to one of the largest mixed-race communities.
I went to this club called the Ebo Club at the bottom of Parliament Street, and I went in there for the very first time one evening and opened this door, and for the first time in my whole life at the age of 29, there was this room full of people who looked very similar to me.
It was a revelation. Finally, he felt he knew who he was. He didn't have to try to be white or black.
Not just in terms of the complexion, but the whole structure and the way, just the way they looked and acted. And it was a complete shock to see so many people like myself in one space.
Clement's journey marks one little victory for all mixed-race people. One more step in their fight to carve out an identity for themselves.
But there was still one major battle. It pitted black activists against those in charge of social policy. Should mixed-race children be defined by their colour or by their need?
In 1989, those black activists and social workers got what they'd campaigned for. The new Children's Act effectively reversed the previous guidance of 1970, saying race should be given due consideration. Councils should try, whenever appropriate, to match black children to black couples and mixed-race children to black or mixed-race couples.
However well-meaning that instruction to consider race was, it effectively meant that many mixed-race children ended up in care rather than with a family. You see, there simply weren't enough mixed-race couples who wanted to take them in.
One mixed-race couple bucked that trend. On the 10th of February 1998, Mike and Julie D'Souza were sitting outside a room, awaiting a decision on adoption.
They came back and just sat down with us, I think, and just said, I'm really sorry, we need to talk to you. And just delivered the news that we hadn't been approved.
It was a personal rejection of my own, of who I was, and I just felt like that I wasn't good enough to be the father of a
They'd approached Bernardo's, believing they would be the perfect candidates to adopt a mixed-race child. How wrong they'd been. As the meeting unfolded, it became apparent that the social workers didn't think they were ready. The family needed some extra training.
Time for dinner now. Let's go. I thought it was a bit of a joke, to be honest. I thought this is,
Joke? Well, I think I'd have been pretty angry. I mean, I don't want to put words into your mouth.
The anger came later. It was after the second panel, because we figured, okay, it's just one more hoop to jump through. Once we get through this, it'll be fine. We'll have our son. Everything will be okay.
The extra training for Mike and Julie was a year-long racial awareness course. By now, they'd begun to select a child to take home. So, in February 1998, they attended a final adoption panel.
There were 13 people in the room. 12 of them were white English. There was an Asian woman, and I was the only black male in the room. And they were saying that their concern was I wouldn't be able to equip a black boy to deal with racism as he grew up. They would rather revoke our approval and allow a child to grow up in the care system than to be placed in a home with parents who love and care care and would want to nurture that child. I just felt like that was just so wrong.
Sue was told she couldn't adopt because she was too tall. Mike was told he wasn't black enough to adopt. This is the Vanessa Show.
The story of the D'Souza adoption process soon broke nationally, causing outrage in the media. Barnardo's at that time said they had involved a black social worker at an earlier stage in the process.
A new dawn has broken, has it not?
The row had coincided with a change at national level with the election in 1997 of a new Labour government. And with it came Britain's first mixed-race MPs.
I was a child of mixed heritage. My mother was white, my father was black, and I was brought up as a young black African male. That's how I saw myself. Because frankly, when the National Front or the British movement are kicking your head in, George Elagaya, they don't ask whether you are of Indian origin or whether you are mixed race or whether you are black or whatever. You're a nigger, you're black, you're a wog, and they kick your head in. Now, if you're bringing up a child into such a world, then that's a very heavy responsibility, and you have to be equipped to give them that sense of self-worth and strength of identity that sees them through that. But, you know, they are white parents who can do that, they're black parents who can do that, they're white parents who fail in that, and they are black parents and mixed-race parents who fail in that, because parenting in such a situation is a very difficult job.
By 1998, Paul Boateng was a junior minister. He drew on his own experience when he decided to change, once again, the guidance on adoptions. He said it was unacceptable for a child to be denied loving adoptive parents solely on the grounds that the child and adopters did not share the same racial or cultural background. It's a decision he continues to stand by.
Is it preferable in any event to have two loving white parents who are making an effort to bring the child up with a good sense of self-worth and identity? Is it better that they should be brought up by such a couple than languish in a children's home? Yes, or languish in a situation in which they're fostered from one foster home to another? Yes, because all the evidence is that the state is a pretty bad parent. That's the reality.
The D'Souzas didn't give up. A year later, they applied to be adoptive parents again, this time with Hackney Council.
And after a year, we were unconditionally approved. And then 4 months later, we got our son.
Whose name is?
Caleb.
How old is he now?
He's 10. So we got him at 8 months.
His birth mother was half Nigerian, half Welsh, I believe. And his biological father was white English. And so he's quarter Nigerian, in fact. But he's fantastic. He's such a great little kid.
So you're kind of a regular United Nations.
We really are. That's right.
A happy ending for the D'Souzas. But even today, mixed-race children still account for more than 8% of those in care, when they only make up 3% of our population.
But there are signs of change. The new coalition government issued more guidance, making race just one of many factors that need to be considered, and it's no longer the most important one. Here's what it says. As long as a family can meet all the emotional needs of a child seeking a permanent home, their ethnic origin should not be a factor.
That reinforcement of the Labour guidelines is not a hard and fast rule. It's still down to adoption agencies and local councils. In the 90s, despite previous attempts to limit non-European immigration, Britain continued to attract new arrivals. Wars and conflicts produced a stream of refugees from every corner of the world, and they made their new homes here. Vietnamese boat people built a community in Nottingham, Bosnians congregated in London, and the Congolese headed for Sheffield.
So, refugee by refugee, migrant by migrant, Britain was becoming one of the most ethnically diverse places on earth. It meant that an Arab from Morocco could fall in love with a Cambodian, or that an Iranian could marry a Burmese girl. And their children, well, they'd be mixed race and British.
And attitudes towards mixed-race couples were changing too. While in the 50s the majority of British people had disapproved of mixed marriages, one survey showed that by the mid-90s, only 10% would admit to being against them.
From the 50s to the 90s, obviously a lot changed. People living side by side with each other. But on top of that, at an official level, we have race legislation being brought in. And so this changing idea that it's normal to have different races living side by side, but also that racism isn't normal, that racism is wrong.
But Britain itself was changing. By the early 1990s, the mixed-race population in Britain was estimated to be over 300,000. It was by no means huge, but a considerable part of the population nonetheless.
Proof of that could be found on most estates in virtually every suburb and in the homes of the rich, the famous and the titled.
In 1992, rock legend David Bowie married the Somalian model Iman. And in 1995, cricketing royalty Imran Khan married English gentry Jemima Goldsmith. Then, 2 years later, Diana, Princess of Wales, then considered the most famous woman in the world, was photographed with her new Egyptian boyfriend, Dodi Al-Fayed.
What happens when you began to see famous mixed-race relationships? I'm thinking of people like Jemima Goldsmith and Imran Khan, the cricketer, Princess Diana and Dodi. What was the effect of that?
I think it brought the idea of mixed-race relationships into a different public realm, and it questioned slightly some of the assumptions and stereotypes that were out there about mixed-race relationships, and the idea that these are primarily working class. And so to see these high-profile celebrities in these mixed relationships, particular people like Princess Diana and Dodi Fayed, made people think, oh, that's interesting. I didn't think it was those sort of people that mixed race.
The irony was that while white Britain, whether it was the mother to a future king or someone down the road, seemed to be more relaxed about mixed-race relationships, some immigrants were still locked into the old ways. The Asian community still remains one of those with the lowest rates of marrying out.
Look, so what if she's pregnant? So what if the father's black?
Black?
This is the 20th century, you know.
Now chaos has come.
That will kill your family, you know. Let's just calm down, sisters, all right?
The film Bargee on the Beach was greeted with outrage by many Asians, especially the sight of an Indian girl kissing a black man. It showed how hard it was for them to break with the past.
Magic.
If my sister had come home with a black guy, then I would have been against it, if I'm telling you the truth, because culturally I would have not been able to accept that. And I can't say why, but that's just the way I think I'm programmed as an Indian.
But love, they say, conquers all. As we've seen in this story, it can break down even the firmest of cultural barriers.
I assumed my whole life that I was going to actually just marry an Indian girl, as that was what was expected from me, from my family and relatives. That's the way I was brought up. So I had to marry someone that was going to be the perfect daughter-in-law for my family and me as a husband.
I never really thought she was going to turn into a serious relationship because he mentioned that, you know, when he would get married, he'd be to an Indian girl and that sort of thing.
But Jaspreet Pandya didn't get married to an Indian girl. He married Primrose Jackson in Hounslow in 2009. The bride wore a white wedding dress during the day
and in the evening Asian dress. To them, the day was a blending of their different cultures, Zimbabwean and Sikh. It all went smoothly on the day, but the road to the wedding was anything but.
I was thinking she's a nice girl, but I thought to myself, there's no way I could ever get serious with this girl because this is not going to go anywhere and I could lose everyone in my life if I do this. Like, I went with a girl like a black girl, basically.
Jaspreet's parents are from India and he's been brought up in a very traditional Punjabi Sikh household.
Tell my parents. That was hard, very hard, the hardest thing I ever did in my life. My dad was very supportive and he was ready to get us married straight away. But there were people obviously that said, we're not happy and we're not going to come to the wedding if he's going to do this. So those people didn't come. But I got over it and I wake up every morning happiest man on the planet. So for me, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
The couple both accept that it will take time for some people to accept their relationship fully, but they're rather hoping their latest news will make it easier.
Will we have children? Yes, we're actually expecting a kid now. There's a little baby in there.
So, yeah, we're ecstatic.
We're over
Can't
the
wait
moon.
to be a dad.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to that.
So it'll be an infusion of both.
I wish it was 9 months
both
ago
of us.
quicker. So
yeah.
Quite proud of myself actually.
Remember that little girl on the platform at Paddington Station? Rosie Walters was put into care when she was just 2 years old because her white mother couldn't cope with having a mixed-race child. 10 years later, she was moved from the mainly white area of Swansea to the mixed area of Stockwell in London, where she grew up and still lives. The changes in her life mirror and reflect the changes in our country.
I was about 31 years old when I was able to stand up and say, I am a black woman of mixed parentage. I started to feel more comfortable with who I was. I started to recognise my own worth in society. I think when I started to branch out to meet different people from different backgrounds, I started to realise it's actually all right to be yourself, you know, Rose. You can be yourself.
She's found herself, and her country has found her. 20 years ago, when she first started filling out the national census form, she only had the box marked Other. Now it is different.
This is 2011, of course it's census year. In a way, Britain's going to give you the opportunity to kind of tick something and say you're mixed race. How does that feel?
I think it's a big step forward, isn't it, really? And it does show that there's some recognition.
So what are you going to put? White Afro-Caribbean?
White Afro-Caribbean, yeah. That's what I am. That's who I am.
Done. You're official.
At last. At last. Been a long time coming, isn't it? But, you know, yeah.
The census may not reveal the mixed-race population in all its complexity, but it has shattered one stereotype,
that it's largely a working-class phenomenon.
There is a very middle-class dimension to mixed-race families in Britain. They tend to have higher levels of home ownership, higher levels of the educational profiles, which again challenges this idea that it's a working class or even an underclass phenomenon, something that you only find in council estates, in inner cities. In fact, the picture of mixing in Britain is something which is more middle class and spread throughout the country, not just in pockets of cities.
There are places in Britain where colour, mixed race or otherwise, is still a rarity, perhaps exotic. But here in Newham, in East London, 75%, 3/4 of all newborn babies will have mothers who were themselves born outside the UK. So, imagine you're a teenager and you're out looking for a boyfriend or girlfriend and you want to stick to your own kind. You may find the choice is rather limited.
I've come back to where our story began, Limehouse Docks. Waves of new arrivals since then have swelled our ethnic population and resulted in Britain's mixed-race people becoming one of the fastest-growing and youngest ethnic groups in the country. In the 2001 census, there were well over 500,000 mixed-race people in the UK. That figure is now thought to have grown to 1 million.
It did flash that time.
I asked some of those I'd met on my journey to join me to come together and celebrate their differences, but also what they shared in common. There was Connie, who'd endured the humiliation